1. Meredith desperately struggled against the metal restraints binding her arms and legs to the operating table. She closed her eyes, straining her muscles, adrenaline surging through her. But the restraints wouldn't budge. "Please," she begged, hot tears running down her cheeks. Jack ignored her pleas, focusing intently on her neck as he slowly slid a hypodermic needle beneath her skin. "Almost done," he said, depressing the plunger. Meredith's neck was too numb to feel the needle, but the injection burned as it spread through her veins. She gasped and tried once more to rip her arm away from her captor. Jack's eyes were on hers as she writhed. The same warm hazel eyes as they'd been when Meredith had thought of him as a mentor, as one of the best hunters she'd ever met. Before she knew Jack was a vampire. Before he had murdered Stefan. Before she'd known he was changing her. "I don't want to be a vampire," she whispered, her voice shaking. Her eyes blurred with tears. Meredith thought of Christian, the vampire brother she'd had to kill, of the generations of her family whose life mission had been to destroy the supernatural race. She couldn't become one of the enemy. Not after everything she'd been through. A brief smile crossed Jack's face, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "It's done." Meredith ached everywhere. She began to shake her head slowly back and forth as her breath came in ragged, anxious spurts. "I'll kill myself," she said desperately. Jack grinned more widely. "Go ahead and try," he said. "I perfected the treatments. We're unkillable." With a fresh flare of panic, Meredith again slammed her arms and legs against the restraints. The heavy, numb feeling was fading, and metal bit sharply into her wrists. In a burst of effort, she snapped the metal bands and was free. Meredith tumbled off the operating table and, still shaky on her feet, hit the floor hard. On her hands and knees, she scrabbled for the door, expecting Jack to hoist her back onto the table at any moment. But Jack didn't make a move toward her, just watched as she struggled. She could hear herself breathing, a harsh, desperate panting, as she pulled herself across the floor. She just needed to get out. She made it to the door and pulled herself up, hanging on to the knob. "You'll be back," Jack said, his voice an eerie calm. Wrenching the door open, Meredith burst through and ran as fast as she could, stumbling through the hall. It was long and fluorescent lit, the floors dark gray tile like those of a hospital or a school. She listened for Jack's footsteps in the hall behind her, but there was only his laughter, bubbling maniacally from the room she had left behind. "You'll be back," he called again. "You won't be able to help it." Not letting herself think of anything but escape, Meredith looked around frantically. Double doors at the end of the hall led toward a stairway, and she pushed through, her feet slapping at the concrete stairs, heading down, and she hoped out. The stairs seemed to go on forever. Finally, she burst through another set of double doors and onto the sidewalk. She paused for a moment, gasping for breath as she gazed around. Office buildings stretched behind her. She had no idea where she was. It was still dark out, but the sky was beginning to lighten toward gray. Everything in her was screaming, "Get away!" her heart still hammering in panic. What if Jack's fierce, invulnerable vampires were nearby? Meredith pressed her back against the cold brick wall of the building behind her, trying to conceal herself in the darkness, and looked around cautiously. No one. She sucked in a deep breath, trying to calm her pounding heart. There'd be no sense in running at random. She clenched her fists and deliberately relaxed, forcing the tension out of her body. She was steadier on her feet now, her arms and legs tingling as the numbness wore off. There was no one in sight. To her left, Meredith heard the sound of cars racing past on a highway. She headed in that direction, ready to find her way home.